He slammed the door, so I shut down his life. My brother's fake online life exposed. Welcome back with a new real shock story. Before we start, comment and tell me which city you're watching from. AT the end. Don't forget to subscribe and rate it from 0 to 10. Let's enjoy the story, everyone.
I still remember that night like it's burned into my mind, the kind of memory you wish you could forget. But it just won't let you. It was supposed to be a normal evening. Nothing special, nothing strange. I had just finished work and was heading home, walking the same road I've walked 100 times before. The air was cold, the streetlights flickered, and everything felt too still, like the world was holding its breath. My name's Alic Rose, and this is the story of the night everything in my life changed. I was halfway down Elm Street when I heard it, a door slam. It was sharp and sudden, echoing through the empty street. I turned around, but I didn't see anyone. For a second, I thought maybe it was nothing. Maybe just someone angry about something that had nothing to do with me. I shrugged it off and kept walking. But then, I felt it. That feeling you get when someone's watching you. When the hairs on the back of your neck rise and your steps suddenly sound too loud. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was being paranoid, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I pulled my jacket tighter and checked my phone. No new messages, no missed calls. I just wanted to get home. That's when I noticed a dark car parked across the street, engine running, lights off. It hadn't been there a minute ago. My heart started to race. I walked faster. The sound of my shoes hitting the pavement seemed to echo louder and louder, matching the rhythm of my heartbeat. The car didn't move, but I could feel the eyes behind that windshield following me, watching, waiting. When I turned the corner, I finally saw someone, a man, standing under a streetlight, pretending to scroll through his phone. But the way he stood there, it wasn't casual. He wasn't texting, he was waiting. I crossed to the other side, pretending not to notice, pretending everything was fine. I even forced a smile when he looked up, one of those polite smiles you give a stranger, just to keep peace. But his expression didn't change. Cold, focused. That's when I decided to cut through the alleyway, something I'd never usually do at night. But I wanted to get off that street. I figured it'd be faster. I was wrong. The moment I stepped into that narrow alley, the air felt heavier. My steps echoed off the walls. Somewhere behind me, I heard another set of footsteps. Slow, careful, matching mine. I stopped. The sound stopped. I took another step. So did they. I spun around. Nothing. Just darkness. The kind that swallows everything. My chest tightened, and I told myself again that I was overreacting. Maybe it was just someone taking the same shortcut home, but my gut screamed otherwise. When I finally reached the end of the alley, I almost ran into someone. He was standing right at the exit, blocking the way. "Excuse me," I said, my voice shaking more than I wanted it to. He didn't move. He just stared like he was trying to read my face, memorize it. Then he said something that still echoes in my mind. "You shouldn't be here, Alic." He knew my name. My whole body froze. I had never seen him before in my life. I tried to speak, to ask who he was, but nothing came out. My throat felt locked. He smiled, just a little, and stepped aside. "You should go home," he said quietly, "before it's too late." I didn't wait to find out what he meant. I ran. I didn't look back, didn't stop until I reached my apartment door. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped my keys. When I finally got inside, I locked every single bolt. For a while, I just stood there, breathing hard, trying to make sense of what happened. Maybe he was just some creepy stranger. Maybe it was all a coincidence. That's what I told myself. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. The next morning, everything started to unravel. When I left for work, my neighbors were whispering. People stared at me, not with curiosity, but with judgment. I didn't know why until I checked my phone. There it was, my face, all over social media, a photo of me from last night, walking down that street. The caption read, "Local woman seen, leaving the scene minutes before the incident." My stomach dropped. What incident? I clicked the post, and what I read made my heart stop. Someone had been attacked last night, on Elm Street, around the same time I was there. And now, somehow, they were saying it was me. I stared at the screen, trying to breathe. My hands went cold. It didn't make sense. None of it did. I tried to call my brother, Aaron, to tell him what was happening, but he didn't answer. By noon, the post had been shared hundreds of times. Strangers were commenting, calling me names, saying I should be arrested. Someone even posted my address. That's when I realized this wasn't just a misunderstanding. Someone was doing this on purpose. Someone wanted to ruin me, and I had no idea why. That was the beginning, the first thread that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my life, my family, and myself. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that post, my photo, my name, those comments that felt like knives. By morning, my phone was buzzing nonstop. At first, I thought maybe people were checking on me. They weren't. The messages were cold, sharp, accusing. We know what you did. You can't hide forever. Each notification made my heart pound harder. I tried to fight back. I wrote, "This isn't true. I was just walking home." But the more I tried to explain, the worse it got. People twisted my words, screenshot them, laughed. They didn't want truth. They wanted a story that fed their anger. At work, everything felt different. My manager pulled me aside. She looked uncomfortable, eyes darting toward the others. "Alic, maybe you should take a few days off," she said softly, "until things calm down." Calm down. My life was unraveling, and she wanted me to wait it out like a bad storm. When I stepped outside, 2 reporters were standing by the parking lot. One of them shouted my name. The other lifted a camera. The flash made me flinch. "Alic, do you have anything to say about the attack?" Attack. That word hit like a brick. I didn't answer. I just walked away, head down, wishing I could disappear. By the time I got home, my mailbox was stuffed with letters, most of them blank. One of them with a single word scrawled across a torn page: "Monster." I tore it up and threw it away, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Mom called that evening. Her voice trembled. "Sweetheart, people are saying awful things. Don't go outside, okay? Just stay inside." I wanted to sound brave, but all that came out was a whisper. "I didn't do anything, Mom." "I know, honey," she said. "I know," but I could hear the doubt hiding behind her words. Even she was scared to believe what was real anymore. I sat on the couch, scrolling through the chaos. Hundreds of strangers arguing about my life, analyzing my face, inventing their own versions of who I was. Every comment felt like a tiny cut. "She looks guilty. You can see it in her eyes." Funny how fast people can decide what guilt looks like. By midnight, the story had spread to local news pages. They blurred my picture, but everyone still knew it was me. The caption read, "Woman questioned in connection with late-night incident on Elm Street." Questioned? I hadn't even spoken to the police yet. Someone out there was feeding them lies. That's when the fear turned into anger. I didn't deserve this. I hadn't done anything wrong. So why was the world turning against me? I opened my laptop and started looking for answers. I traced the first post back to an account with no name, just a black and white photo of a city skyline. No followers. Joined 2 days ago. Every thread led to a dead end. But then I noticed something strange. A photo they'd posted had been taken from a nearby security camera. A camera that wasn't public. Someone had access they shouldn't have had. That thought stayed with me through the night. Whoever started this knew where I was, when I was there, and how to twist it. The next morning my friend Maya showed up. She looked worried but determined. "I believe you," she said before I could even speak. Those 3 words nearly broke me. She sat with me, scrolling through the mess. "We'll figure out where it came from," she said. "But first, we need to keep you safe." Safe. The word felt fragile. We went through my messages together. Dozens of threats, some from fake accounts, some from people I thought were friends. It was terrifying how easily a lie could spread, how fast people could turn. By the 3rd day, I stopped opening my curtains. The street outside wasn't my street anymore. It was a stage for everyone else's judgment. Cars slowed as they passed. Sometimes they honked. Sometimes they shouted. One night, someone threw a crumpled newspaper at my door. On the front page was my blurred face again. The headline read, "Neighbors speak out as investigation continues." Investigation. I hadn't even been called in. But now, the rumor was truth in everyone's mind. Maya tried to cheer me up. She said, "The truth always comes out, Alic." I wanted to believe her, but truth felt small compared to the noise. When I finally fell asleep that night, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I ignored it, too tired to care. But in the morning, I saw a new message that made my blood run cold. "We know what really happened. Stop lying or next time, it won't just be your name on the line." I stared at it for a long time, heart pounding, breath uneven. My fingers hovered over the screen. I didn't recognize the number. but somehow it felt personal, like whoever sent it knew me. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a crowd of strangers. Someone was pulling the strings. Someone close enough to know my name, my schedule, even my fears. And that's when I decided, die. Couldn't stay quiet anymore. If I didn't fight back, this story would end the way they wanted it to. When dawn came, I was still staring at that message. The words glowed on my screen like they were alive. I couldn't ignore them anymore. Someone knew too much about me. And if I didn't find out who, the lies would never stop. I opened my laptop again and began digging, not just through social media posts, but through every tiny clue hidden inside them. Timestamps, location tags, the way the photos were cropped. There was a pattern there, something deliberate. Maya leaned over my shoulder. Whoever's doing this, she said, they're smart, but they're also careless. Nobody hides every footprint. That was the first moment all week that I felt a spark of control return. I used to love mornings, the quiet, the smell of coffee, the soft hum of the city starting its day. Now mornings felt like judgment. Every notification sound was another whisper, another reminder that the world outside had already decided who I was. The first week after the posts went viral, I tried to ignore them. I told myself people would see the truth, that lies burn out fast. But lies are like sparks in dry grass. Once they start, they feed on anything they touch. I stopped checking my phone for messages that weren't there. Friends from work didn't call. My inbox was a desert, except for a few subject lines that made my stomach twist. Just checking in, heard about what happened. No one really wanted to check in. They just wanted confirmation that the gossip was true. One afternoon, I stood by the window of my apartment, watching kids play across the street. Their laughter felt like something from another lifetime. I pressed my forehead against the glass and tried to remember the last time I'd laughed without second-guessing myself. My mom called that night. She'd seen some of the posts and didn't know what to believe. Her voice trembled. "Alic, just tell me it's not true." I couldn't even answer, because in that moment, truth didn't seem to matter. The story had already been written, my name attached to things I'd never done, my picture turned into proof. I started noticing the small changes first. The barista who used to know my order by heart suddenly avoided eye contact. The neighbor who always said good morning kept her door half closed when I passed. I'd become a ghost in my own neighborhood, visible but untouchable. Sleep became a memory. At night, I'd lie in bed, replaying every conversation I'd ever had online, wondering which word had been twisted, which photo had been stolen. Sometimes I'd draft long posts trying to explain myself, to clear everything up, but I'd delete them before hitting send. I knew the mob didn't care about explanations. They wanted entertainment. One night, I found myself scrolling through the comments again, even though I promised I wouldn't. Someone had written, "She deserves what's coming." I stared at that sentence until the screen blurred. It wasn't anger I felt, it was exhaustion. The kind that sits deep in your bones and tells you maybe it's easier to disappear for a while. The next morning, I packed a small bag and drove out of the city. No plan, no destination, just distance. I ended up at a lake 2 hours away, a place we used to visit when I was a kid. The air was cold and clean, and for the first time in weeks, there was silence, no buzzing phone, no notifications, just the sound of water brushing against the shore. I sat there for hours, letting the quiet untangle the noise in my head. For a moment, I almost believed I could start over. But even in that stillness, I knew the story wasn't finished. The internet never forgets. And somewhere back in that city, someone was still feeding the fire that had almost burned my life down. When I came back from the lake, the city looked different. The same streets, the same buildings, but something inside me had changed. I was done hiding. Silence hadn't protected me. It had only made the lies louder. The first thing I did was turn my phone back on. The screen lit up with hundreds of unread notifications. My hands shook, but this time not from fear, from anger. I realized that if I kept running, whoever started all this would win. They'd own my story forever. So I opened my laptop and began scrolling back through every message, every tagged post. I started looking not at what was said, but how it was said. There were patterns, similar words, the same type of punctuation, the same time of night when the worst comments appeared. It was like hearing one voice disguised behind 100 masks. Maya called while I was in the middle of my search. "You okay?" she asked. I hesitated. "No, but I'm done pretending to be." She came over that evening, bringing her laptop and a bottle of tea. We sat on the floor, surrounded by open tabs, piecing together the trail like detectives who'd lost too much sleep. Every thread we pulled led to another account, another alias. The deeper we went, the more I felt the shape of something familiar, rhythm I knew but couldn't quite place. That at one point, Maya paused, staring at the screen. Alic, look at this username. It's an old one, right? Didn't you use something like that years ago? My stomach tightened. The name was almost identical to one I'd made for a shared project ages ago, back when I trusted everyone in my small circle. Someone who had access to my old files could have twisted them, reposted pictures, even mimicked my writing style. That realization was worse than any insult online. It meant this wasn't random hate. It was personal. The air in the apartment felt heavy. Maya reached out, touching my shoulder lightly. You don't have to do this alone. I wanted to believe her, but part of me knew that no one could fully understand what it felt like to have your identity stolen, not just your name or your photos, but your entire sense of who you are. Every lie told about me had chipped away at the girl I used to be. Still, something inside me hardened. I wasn't going to disappear. If someone wanted to write my story, I'd write it louder. That night, I opened a blank document and started typing, not explanations, not apologies, just truth, my truth. I wrote about what it felt like to lose control of your own reflection, how silence can become a cage, how rumors spread faster than reality ever could. When I finally hit post, my heart pounded. I didn't know what would happen next, whether people would believe me, mock me, or ignore me altogether, but at least my voice was out there again, cutting through the noise like a signal in the static dot. The next morning, I woke up to thousands of messages, some cruel, yes, but many kind. Strangers saying they'd been through the same thing, people thanking me for speaking when they couldn't. It didn't erase what had happened. But for the first time, the narrative wasn't just against me. The sun was rising through the window, soft and golden. I sat there watching it and whispered to myself, I'm still here. And for the first time in a long while, that felt like enough. The sun came through my window that morning, like it hadn't in months, warm, steady, almost forgiving. I sat there with my coffee, reading the flood of messages on my phone. It was strange. The same device that had once felt like a weapon in my hands now hummed with quiet empathy. People were sharing their stories. Some said they'd been through worse. Others said they finally felt seen. For the first time, the internet didn't sound like a mob, it sounded like a crowd learning how to listen. I wish I could say that everything was fixed after that post. It wasn't. The lies didn't vanish. They never really do. Some accounts kept spreading them, like echoes that refused to fade. But their voices grew smaller, quieter, because the truth had something they didn't, a heartbeat. When I walked down the street now, some people still looked away, but others smiled, small, knowing smiles that said, I saw what you wrote. I get it. That was enough for me. That went back to the lake one weekend, alone this time. The air was cold again, the kind that bites your skin but wakes you up. I sat by the water and watched the ripples. Each one started from a single drop, spreading out farther than you'd expect. That's how stories work too, I realized. They ripple. Mine began with a lie, but it didn't have to end with one. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who stayed quiet, who thought silence would make her invisible. She didn't know that silence only feeds the noise. Now I did. Before I left, I took a small stone from the shore and tossed it into the water. It disappeared instantly, but the ripples stayed for a long time. I whispered to myself, let that be the last echo of the old me. On the drive home, I turned on the radio for the first time in weeks. A song I hadn't heard since childhood played, something light, something ordinary. And it hit me how much I'd missed feeling ordinary. When I pulled into my driveway, I saw Maya waiting on the steps with 2 coffees. She smiled when she saw me. You look lighter, she said. I think I am, I answered. I sat beside her, sipping the coffee, watching the world move around us. Somewhere out there, the internet was still buzzing, still hungry for its next story. But for once, I didn't feel like its prey. I felt steady, because the truth was mine again. Maybe that's all we can ever really take back after something like this. Not our reputation, not everyone's belief, but our own story. And if you're listening to me now, if you've ever felt buried by lies, by judgment, by the weight of someone else's version of your life, then hear me when I say this. You are still here. You are still real. And no one, not even the loudest lie, can erase that.